alien war veteran warned them about humans. Now they regret ignoring it. HFY Sci-Fi stories. The council chamber was silent as the holographic image of a weathered alien flickered into existence. His name was Kainar, an elder of the Kalith species, a race known for its vast intellect and formidable military prowess. His reptilian features, once sharp and imposing, were now softened by age, but his eyes still held the burning intensity of a warrior. He had lived through the most brutal conflict in galactic history, the Great War against humanity. The Council of the Galactic Alliance listened intently, but their skepticism was palpable. They had heard it all before. Humans were dangerous, unpredictable, and could not be trusted. But Kainar had something different to say. I told you. Kainar's voice was gravelly, his words deliberate. I warned you all. When humanity first encountered our kind, I saw something in them that none of you were willing to acknowledge. Their hunger for survival, their drive, their sheer audacity. It is unlike anything we've ever faced. A murmur ran through the council, but Kainar held up a clawed hand, silencing them. I was there on the front lines, he continued, his voice thick with memories of war. We thought we could crush them easily. After all, they were a young species, barely out of their infancy compared to us. But I knew that their spirit, unstoppable and relentless, would make them more dangerous than any enemy we had ever fought. And I warned you. You chose to ignore it. You said they were primitive, too disorganized, too fractured. A younger member of the council, a sleek, amphibious creature named Zathra, spoke up. Kainar, you must understand. Our resources are limited. We have to think of the greater good. Humanity's actions on their own world? They were reckless. Yes, Kainar interrupted, his gaze turning cold. But you have no idea what they are capable of when cornered. When the war began, we were still underestimating them. We thought they would break under pressure, but they didn't. He paused, his eyes distant, as though reliving the horrors of that time. They adapted, they learned, they fought back in ways we never predicted. And when they finally pushed us to the brink, we realized we had made a mistake. We thought they were primitive. We thought they were weak. But they weren't. They were simply different. The council members exchanged uneasy glances. Many of them had heard the rumors of human soldiers turning the tide of entire battles, of humans outsmarting alien tactics and weapons with sheer ingenuity and cunning. But to hear it from Kainar, a war veteran who had fought in the bloodiest of galactic conflicts, was something else entirely. I was there when they took our capital, Kainar said, his voice lowering. I saw their ships, their soldiers, their unyielding will. They didn't stop, even when we offered terms of surrender. They didn't stop. They fought for every inch of ground. And when we had nothing left to give, when they had us on the ropes, they didn't show mercy. They showed respect, and that was worse. They didn't fear us. They respected us as worthy adversaries, and in that respect, they were already leagues ahead of us. Another counselor, a towering insectoid named Gorax, scowled. So what? You say they were strong. That means nothing. Strength alone doesn't dictate the future. Kainar's eyes narrowed. Strength isn't just physical power. It's will, it's adaptability, and it's the ability to do whatever it takes to win. Humans have that in abundance. That's why they will be a force to reckon with for centuries to come. I've seen them outthink and outfight species far older and more advanced than they are. You can no longer afford to ignore them. A heavy silence settled over the chamber. The weight of Kainar's words was undeniable. Many of them had dismissed the human threat as a passing phase. After all, their history was filled with such threats, barbaric species that rose and fell, never quite capable of keeping up with the galactic order. But Kainar had survived, and he had seen the truth. The younger members, eager to prove themselves, began to murmur among themselves, questioning their previous stance. Was humanity truly the threat they had assumed it to be? Or were they simply too proud to acknowledge a new, emerging power? I came here today, Kainar said, his voice carrying a finality that cut through the tension, not to seek redemption for the mistakes of the past, but to make one last plea. Do not make the same error again. Humanity is not something to be underestimated. If you continue to ignore them, if you continue to treat them like an inconsequential species, you will regret it. And when the time comes, and it will come, you will have no one but yourselves to blame. He turned, his image flickering out of existence, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. As the members of the Galactic Alliance processed the veteran's words, many were forced to confront an uncomfortable truth. They had underestimated humanity, and now, with the memory of the Great War still fresh in their minds, they could only hope it wasn't already too late. The aftermath. Months later, a transmission from the front lines would reach the Council. A human-led coalition had conquered another sector of the galaxy, advancing at an unprecedented rate. Their tactics were unlike anything the Council had ever seen, and their military might was growing stronger by the day. The Galactic Alliance would face a choice: adapt to the new reality of a human-dominated universe or risk being left behind, forgotten in the wake of a relentless species that had proven time and again that they would not stop, not yield, and never surrender. Kainar had warned them. Now, the question remained: would they listen, or would they repeat the same mistake humanity had already proven them wrong for making? The reckoning. The day the message came, it shook the very foundation of the Galactic Alliance. A distress signal from the far reaches of the Zareth cluster, one of the most peaceful sectors, home to dozens of advanced, peaceful species, a sector that had never been touched by war or aggression, until now. The transmission was brief, but the words were chilling. We are being overrun. The humans, they do not stop. The fleets, too numerous, too coordinated. They are everywhere. Please, help us. It had been years since the Great War, but no one had forgotten Kainar's warning. And now, humanity had proven him right. They had spread, like a virus, pushing outward into neighboring sectors, claiming space, resources, and alliances at an alarming rate. Their military tactics had evolved, their weapons upgraded, their unity strengthened. It was clear, the humans were no longer a fledgling species. They were a rising empire. The Council had no choice but to respond. Yet, it wasn't enough. As the Alliance sent its fleets to counter the human advance, they discovered something more unsettling. Humanity wasn't just fighting for control of space or resources, they were fighting for something else. A message from the front lines, from an anonymous human commander, sent to the Galactic Alliance fleet, struck terror into the hearts of every council member. This war is not about your sectors. It's not about your resources. We fight because we are human, and no one, not you or anyone else, will ever stop us. You were warned. The eerie simplicity of the message was enough to rattle even the most stoic of the council members. But it was the final line, "You were warned," that echoed in their minds long after the transmission ended. Kainar's words, once dismissed, now seemed like prophecy. The humans weren't just formidable in battle. They were capable of an endurance, a resilience that no species in the galaxy had ever demonstrated to such an extreme. A new order. Weeks passed, and the Council found themselves at a crossroads. Their fleets were overwhelmed, their defenses crumbling in the face of a force that seemed endless. The humans had a simple yet devastating strategy: fight, adapt, conquer, and then build. They would take over a world or sector, and within months, it was as if they had always been there, stronger, better equipped, and more united than before. On one of the Council's emergency meetings, the tension in the room was palpable. The species of the Alliance had been peaceful for millennia, existing under an unwritten law of mutual respect, but humanity's brutal efficiency was appending all their assumptions. "Should we surrender?" asked Zathra, the amphibious counselor, his voice strained with uncertainty. "Or do we try to negotiate some kind of peace?" Kainar's warning had now become their only guiding principle. Humanity did not seek peace in the way the Council understood it. They didn't offer terms unless they were already in a position of undeniable power. Gorax, the insectoid counselor, spoke in a harsh, chittering tone. "We should have acted years ago, when we had the chance. Now, it's too late. They've learned too much from us. The humans adapt faster than any species we've ever known. I say we fight. It's our only option." "I disagree," said Xyrix, a tall, telepathic species that had always favored diplomacy. "There must be another way. We cannot ignore the potential consequences of full-scale war. What if humanity does not seek galactic domination? What if they seek something more insidious?" The debate raged for hours, but the truth was clear: humanity was not like other species. They were not driven by resources, nor by the promise of power. They were driven by something more elusive, more dangerous: their need to push, to expand, To conquer because it was simply in their nature to survive at all costs. The final push. As the Galactic Alliance hesitated, the humans made their move. Their fleets, vast and innumerable, descended on the Alliance's weak points with terrifying precision. What had once been a unified coalition was now fractured, divided, and struggling to keep up. Kainar, now an elder without a true home, watched from the shadows as humanity's dominance spread. He was not part of the war effort. His days on the battlefield were long behind him. But even now, he could see the patterns, the strategies the humans employed, their ability to outthink, outmaneuver, and outlast every opponent. The humans didn't just fight with their armies. They fought with their minds. They learned from their mistakes faster than anyone could adapt to counter them. Kainar knew it was only a matter of time before the Galactic Alliance was reduced to nothing but a footnote in history. One day, the Council received a final message from the human-led forces. "We have reached your capital. It is over. Surrender now, and you will be allowed to live. Fight, and you will perish. Your choice." The message was as blunt as it was final. The humans were no longer simply defending their territory. They were dictating the terms of the galaxy's future. The question no longer was if the Galactic Alliance would survive. The question was, what would the galaxy look like under the rule of humanity? Kainar, too, had to face the bitter truth. He had seen the resilience, the ferocity, and the unwillingness to yield that humans had shown during the war. But now, he realized, that same spirit of survival had transformed them into something far more dangerous, a force that could not be reasoned with, negotiated with, or stopped. He wasn't just a war veteran anymore. He was a relic of an old universe, a witness to the birth of a new order, one in which humanity would reign supreme. And the Galactic Alliance? They had been warned. Now, it was too late. The Age of Humanity. Months passed after the fall of the Galactic Alliance. The once proud council chambers, now emptied of all but a few embittered survivors, were reminders of a galaxy forever changed. Humanity, having conquered and consolidated its dominance across the stars, had ushered in a new era. But it wasn't just the Alliance that had been defeated, it was the very concept of peace and order as it had been known for millennia. As the human empire expanded, they left behind remnants of the old ways, species who had once held power now relegated to subjugation. Leaders of conquered planets brought before the newly formed Human High Council for judgment. The old alliances, once formed in shared interests and mutual respect, dissolved into ash. Now, under the banner of humanity, there was only one rule: adapt or perish. But amidst the harsh victories and oppressive peace that humanity imposed, the question lingered: why had humanity risen so quickly, and what were they truly after? The reckoning of Kainar. Kainar, now an old and forgotten warrior, wandered through the ruined halls of his people's once great capital. The Khalith had always prided themselves on their intellect and military prowess. Their cities had been monumental, their fleets invincible. But now, those cities lay in ruins, and the fleets were scattered, unable to mount a single meaningful counteroffensive against the relentless humans. Kainar had long ago understood the unspoken truth: humanity had not just won the war, they had reshaped the very rules of the universe. His travels brought him to an abandoned shipyard orbiting a dead moon, a place where the last remnants of Khalith shipwrights worked in futile attempts to rebuild what was lost. But Kainar had seen enough of this. His people's legacy was fading, and with each day, humanity's shadow grew longer. In the silence of space, Kainar reflected on his warning. In the beginning, when he had spoken of humanity's relentless nature, the Council had dismissed him, thinking him overzealous. They had underestimated what they were truly up against, not a species of conquerors, but of survivors. And when survival was at stake, humanity would do anything to endure. It wasn't the weapons or the technology that had been their true strength, it was their philosophy. They didn't view the galaxy as a place to be ruled, but a place to be shaped. Humanity's greatest strength was their ability to evolve, not just biologically, but mentally and socially. Every war they fought, every mistake they made, only made them stronger. They learned, adapted, and, perhaps most dangerously of all, they remembered. The Khalith, and the other species of the Galactic Alliance, had been wiped out not by superior technology or overwhelming numbers, but by the fundamental truth: humanity had learned from every past conflict. They would not be vanquished as easily as any other species. The hidden truth. Back on Earth, the heart of humanity's empire, a new chapter was beginning. The High Council of Humans had taken control of the galaxy. But it wasn't just about military conquest. Underneath the harsh regime, another plan was quietly unfolding. In a private chamber beneath the gleaming towers of the Imperial Palace, a small group of human leaders met in secret. They were the architects of the new galaxy, a new order that was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The conversation was a stark contrast to the wars of the past. It was quiet, measured, and filled with the subtle intelligence humanity was known for. "Do you think they ever suspected what we were truly after?" General Mira asked, her sharp eyes focused on the holographic display of the galaxy. "They never understood," replied Chancellor Orton, leaning forward. "The Alliance thought we wanted to rule them, but they failed to realize that we don't need to rule. We need to lead. We were never meant to conquer," General Mira added, her voice filled with a sense of finality. "We were meant to evolve. The galaxy, our galaxy, will grow not through subjugation, but through collaboration. But that will take time. We will teach them, just as we taught ourselves." Chancellor Orton smiled, though there was no joy in it. The Kalith, the Zyrex, the Zathra, none of them understood that we were already beyond them. This isn't about defeating the old order. It's about creating something entirely new. An empire, not of power, but of progress. The humans had learned a truth that no other species had figured out. Survival wasn't just about strength. It was about the ability to continuously redefine what it meant to be alive, to adapt not only to external pressures, but to change the very nature of the conflict itself. And that was the true threat. Not their fleets, not their weapons, but their ideas, the ideas that would change the galaxy forever. Kainar's last stand. Kainar, now tired and bitter, returned to his people's last sanctuary, a decimated planet that had once been the heart of the Kalith civilization. Here, he would meet the last of his people, those who had not been killed in the war, but had chosen to flee into the void. They had hidden in the dark corners of space, hoping that one day they could rebuild what had been lost. But Kainar knew better now. The galaxy had changed. There was no going back. The humans weren't the same as the other species who had fallen to the Kalith's might. They weren't just fighting for survival. They were fighting for a new way of life, one that no empire had ever imagined. He entered the room where the remaining Kalith gathered, their faces solemn as they prepared to discuss their fate. "It's over," Kainar said, his voice tired but resolute. "We were fools to believe we could stand against them. They have reshaped the galaxy in their image. It is no longer a war we are fighting, it is the evolution of life itself." The Kalith leader, Jorthak, looked up at Kainar. "You warned us, Kainar. But there's still time. We can join them. We can become part of this new order." Kainar's eyes darkened. "You don't understand. It's not about joining them. It's about becoming them. The humans don't just conquer, they adapt. They evolve. And if we're not careful, we will become just another chapter in their history, a forgotten one." As Kainar left the gathering, he realized that the galaxy had already moved past his people. The war was lost not to human weapons, but to their philosophy. The Kalith had been a great species, once, but now, in the wake of humanity's rise, they were nothing more than another casualty of an ever-changing universe. The new dawn. Back on Earth, the last remnants of resistance were quelled. The former council members, scattered across the galaxy, came to terms with the inevitable. Some chose to surrender, others chose to flee, but the truth was undeniable. Humanity was no longer just a species among many, they were the architects of a new era. Under their rule, the galaxy would change, old ways would die, but new ways would emerge. It would be a galaxy united, not by force, but by a shared desire to adapt and evolve in a way that no other species had ever dared to imagine. The humans had won not just the war, but the future, and in the quiet corners of space, as former empires crumbled, Kainar's final thought echoed in the emptiness. They were right, they always were. The Empire of Change. Years passed, and the galaxy began to look nothing like it had before. The stars, once symbols of infinite potential, now marked the territories of a unified humanity. The few remaining species that had not been wiped out or absorbed into human society lived on the fringes, either reluctantly joining the new order or fading into irrelevance. Those that adapted thrived, while those who resisted were crushed, not by the might of human weapons, but by the weight of their refusal to change. Humanity had begun to implement a policy of unification, not by force, but through transformation. Where other empires had sought to impose their way of life on others, the humans offered a different kind of dominance, the chance to evolve, to become a part of something greater. The Galactic Alliance's old worlds, once filled with proud species and unique cultures, now had their distinctiveness melded into a singular, efficient, adaptable system. At the core of this transformation was the Human High Council, now made up not only of humans but representatives from the species who had embraced their new way of life. The Zyrics, once known for their elaborate and complex diplomatic strategies, had reshaped their politics under human guidance, creating a more streamlined and pragmatic governing system. The Zathra, once fiercely independent and territorial, had learned the value of cooperation, joining in human-led projects that sought to improve the quality of life for every species under the human banner. Even the Kalith, those who had once scorned the humans, were now learning to adapt their ways to survive in a galaxy ruled by human progress. But there were always those who resisted, the last pockets of those who clung to the old ways, those who had survived the war but refused to change, were hidden in the deepest corners of the galaxy. They saw humanity's rise as an abomination, a perversion of what the galaxy was meant to be, and though they were few in number, they were still dangerous, for they were the last remnants of the old order, and they carried within them the potential for chaos. The remnants of the old. Deep in the outer rim, hidden beneath layers of dust and the veil of forgotten worlds, a resistance was quietly taking shape, led by a shadowy figure known only as the Revenant. This group was made up of former members of the Galactic Alliance, some of the best and brightest minds of their respective species who had survived the war. They had no hope of taking back the galaxy by force, but they knew that humanity's weakness was their overconfidence. If the new empire could be fractured, if the underlying cracks in their system could be exposed, there was still a chance to ignite the fire of rebellion. One of their key operatives, a former Kalith general named Rthak, paced nervously through a darkened war room. His people had lost everything, their once great cities now little more than memories. But Rthak had lived long enough to see that the humans' greatest strength wasn't their power, it was their ability to make the galaxy forget its past. "We cannot allow this," Rthak muttered to the assembled resistance leaders. "The humans will erase us, all of us, and we will become nothing more than footnotes in the history of their new galaxy." "You're right," said Vera, a former Zyrics diplomat, her voice sharp, "but we can't defeat them with force. Not now. Their adaptability is too great. We need something more subtle, something that will force them to confront their own weaknesses." Rthak narrowed his eyes. "What do you propose?" Vera smiled darkly. "A disruption, a ripple. We'll take the one thing they can't control, their perfect order, and show them that it's fragile. They may believe their system is invincible, but all it takes is one crack in the foundation to bring it all crumbling down." The plan was simple but dangerous. The resistance would infiltrate the human-controlled sectors, sow discord, and highlight the cracks in humanity's empire, places where their perfection was nothing more than an illusion. The humans had imposed unity, yes, but unity didn't mean peace. It didn't mean true harmony. Beneath the surface, resentment brewed, and the humans had failed to see that their evolution wasn't as flawless as they thought. The crack in the system. Back on Earth, the Human High Council was growing complacent. Their empire stretched across the stars, and every new world they absorbed seemed to fall seamlessly into their fold. The people of Earth, those who had led the charge, were now focused on the future, on continuing humanity's expansion across the galaxy. But even within their own ranks, there were whispers of unrest. General Mira stood at the window of her office, staring out across the spires of the capital city. Below, the streets bustled with activity, humans and aliens alike working in the new order. But in the quiet of her mind, there was a nagging feeling she couldn't shake. For all their success, for all their unity, there was something missing. Humanity's model for the galaxy worked because it had to work. It was an empire built on necessity, and necessity bred conformity. What would happen when the day came that that necessity faded? When the galaxy, as it was now, was no longer enough? "General," came the voice of her aide, breaking her reverie. "We've detected unusual activity on the outer rim. A small fleet has been spotted." no major threat. But it's unusual. Mira's expression hardened. Keep me informed. If it's the resistance, we'll crush them as we always have. But deep inside, she knew something had changed. Humanity had become too confident, too accustomed to success, and as the cracks in the empire began to show, even the humans themselves couldn't help but wonder, how long would it take before those cracks became a chasm? The final choice. Kainar, who had watched from the sidelines, now felt the weight of history pressing down on him. He had been the first to understand humanity's true power, but he had also been the first to see what had been lost in the process. In their rise to power, humanity had created an empire that, for all its strength, lacked the one thing that had once made the galaxy vibrant: diversity of thought. The war had been won, the galaxy had been reshaped, and yet, Kainar couldn't shake the feeling that something vital had been forgotten. The galaxy, in all its complexity, had been simplified to a system that no longer allowed for true freedom. Humanity had won, but in doing so, they had lost the spirit of the very civilizations they had overcome. Now, as resistance movements quietly stirred, Kainar knew the galaxy was not yet finished. There was always room for change, for evolution, and perhaps, in time, humanity would learn that their greatest strength was not just in surviving, but in embracing what they had once feared: diversity. As the first whispers of a new rebellion spread, Kainar took one last, heavy step into the unknown. The galaxy had always been about the balance between strength and weakness, unity and freedom. Perhaps, in the end, the true test for humanity would be not how they reshaped the universe, but how they allowed it to reshape them. And so, the story continued. The galaxy, still vast, still full of potential, would evolve again, whether under the banner of humanity or in defiance of it. The next chapter had only just begun. The rise of the resistance. The resistance, now known as the Echelon, had quietly gained traction over the years. What had started as a handful of disillusioned veterans, exiled diplomats, and rogue scientists had transformed into a well-organized, decentralized network spread across the furthest corners of the galaxy. They had become experts at blending into the new human-led order, quietly sowing discord where it would not be noticed, until one day, the small tremors they caused would reach the ears of the human High Council. Thak, the former Kalath general, had become a leader within the Echelon. His strategic mind and knowledge of Kalath war tactics had proved invaluable in the fight to destabilize the human empire. Under his leadership, the Echelon focused on two key strategies: subversion and disruption. Subversion was their first weapon. By using a combination of human and alien resistance fighters, they infiltrated the very heart of human-controlled systems, posing as loyal citizens or soldiers, gathering intelligence, and spreading seeds of doubt. They exploited humanity's greatest weakness, its desire for perfection. There were cracks, tiny fractures in the human empire's carefully constructed facade, and the Echelon knew how to exploit them. Disruption was their second strategy, and it was the more dangerous of the two. They had learned to hit humanity where it would hurt the most: information. The human empire relied on a vast, interconnected network of data and artificial intelligence to maintain control. The Echelon hacked, tampered, and redirected vast streams of information, creating confusion in military command, misdirecting resources, and sowing fear among humanity's own leadership. A single wrong decision could send ripples of uncertainty throughout the empire, causing hesitation among human commanders who, for the first time, didn't have all the answers. But their most daring move was yet to come. The catalyst. It was on a quiet, seemingly insignificant world near the edge of human-controlled space that the Echelon launched their boldest attack: an engineered virus capable of erasing critical data stored within the human's most powerful artificial intelligences, what the Empire called the Mind Core. The Mind Core was the keystone of humanity's advanced technological dominance, a vast web of sentient algorithms that controlled everything from planetary defense systems to the day-to-day management of every human-inhabited world. Without the Mind Core, the entire human empire would be paralyzed. Its precision-guided fleets would become disoriented, its communication networks would fall silent, and its military strategies would crumble into chaos. The Echelon knew that such a move would be seen as an act of ultimate defiance, and yet, they also knew that it might be the only way to show the galaxy that humanity, for all its power, was not invincible. The virus, a delicate creation of rebel engineers, was released on the industrial world of Treshik 7. It began its work in the shadows, infecting the central hubs of the mind core. Within hours, the data streams began to distort. Within days, chaos erupted. Entire fleets lost contact with their commanders. Key data banks began to feed corrupted information back to the High Council. For the first time in years, the Empire of Humanity was unsure of itself. In the high chambers of the Human High Council, panic set in. Chancellor Orton stood before his fellow leaders, his face pale with disbelief as the reports flooded in. The Mind Core is offline. The network has been infected with an unknown virus, one of the advisors reported, his voice shaking. How could this happen? General Mira asked, her gaze hardening with a mix of disbelief and anger. The Mind Core is infallible. We designed it to be impervious to any external threat. Orton's voice was low, tinged with growing unease. Infiltration on this scale is not possible unless someone inside, has done this. We've been compromised, and I fear the Echelon is more capable than we ever realized. Mira clenched her fists. The Echelon, she spat, as though the very name tasted foul on her tongue. They've been spreading rumors and fear for years, but this is a direct assault on the foundation of our empire. We need to shut down all systems connected to the Mind Core immediately, Orton ordered. But even as the words left his mouth, he knew it might be too late. The virus was already in motion, spreading beyond Treshik 7, and with every passing minute, it became harder to predict the full extent of the damage. The emergence of humanity's true test. In the midst of this crisis, something unexpected began to happen. Across the galaxy, systems that had once been rigid and efficient began to exhibit signs of independence. Small pockets of resistance, once isolated, uncoordinated, and easily crushed, began to coalesce, as if the Mind Core's sudden instability had allowed for an unexpected shift in the balance of power. The humans had built their empire on the concept of total unity, a machine of perfect coordination, but the virus, with its chaotic elegance, had shown the galaxy a different truth. Humanity's empire, for all its power, was built on an illusion. The Mind Core, their most prized achievement, was not just a tool of control, it was a crutch. In the confusion, a voice rose from an unexpected corner of the galaxy, a former human military officer, now a leader of the resistance, who had once been a staunch believer in the Empire's ideology. We are not just fighting against their machines, he broadcasted to every rebel faction. We are fighting for the very soul of what it means to be human. The Mind Core is nothing but a reflection of humanity's fear of chaos, fear of individuality, fear of freedom. But now, in the absence of that control, we must ask ourselves, who are we really? The message resonated across the galaxy. For the first time in years, people began to wonder if humanity's empire was truly worth preserving. The Echelon had done more than attack a system. They had cracked open the very idea of humanity's destiny. No longer would they be content to be merely survivors, built on efficiency and order. No longer would they let the future of the galaxy be dictated by one set of ideals. Humanity had built its empire on adaptability, but now, it was being tested in ways it had never imagined. The choice. As the Mind Core began to regain some semblance of function, the High Council made a choice that would change everything. Instead of doubling down on their attempts to crush the resistance, they proposed a new path. An assembly would be convened, not to destroy the Echelon, but to offer reconciliation. They would offer the galaxy a choice: join humanity's new era of change, or continue to live in the shadows, where the ideals of the past would fester and die. But this wasn't a simple offer of peace. Humanity's leaders understood that their empire's unity could not be maintained through force alone, not anymore. This time, the empire had to evolve once more. Could humanity find a way to truly integrate the diversity of thought, of spirit, that had been their downfall? Could they evolve into something greater than a singular empire? The galaxy watched in anticipation, and the Echelon, watching from the shadows, knew that the final test was at hand. Humanity, for all its might, had been humbled. The question now was whether they could rise from the ashes of their own perfection to build something truly lasting. And in the hearts of many, the same question echoed: would humanity, for once, choose to adapt not just to survive, but to embrace the true diversity of the universe? The galaxy had been changed once again, and the final choice, whether to unite or to fracture, was now humanity's to make. The choice of unity. In the quiet, echoing halls of the Human High Council, the air was thick with tension. The virus, though it had been largely contained, had done its damage. The mind core was no longer the infallible pillar it once was. The human empire had been shaken to its core, and for the first time, its leaders were not certain of their path forward. Chancellor Orton stood at the center of the council room, surrounded by his closest advisors and generals. His mind raced, but outwardly he was calm. A decision had to be made, and it had to be made soon. The resistance, though fractured and diverse, had proven resilient. The echelon had demonstrated that they could strike at the heart of the empire itself. And now, humanity had to choose how to respond, not just with force, but with vision. General Mira, Orton said, his voice steady but tinged with frustration. We've quelled their initial wave, but the virus is not our true enemy. It's the ideas they've spread. The notion that humanity's empire is flawed, that it was never as invincible as we thought. Mira, always the pragmatic soldier, nodded. The unrest is growing. The virus was only a spark. What they've done now is to make people question everything, the very foundation of our order. We could fight back, yes, but we risk pushing those on the fringes further away. And that's not even considering the possibility that some of our own might sympathize with the echelon's cause. Orton looked at the glowing map of the galaxy displayed before them. He could see the movements of ships, the scattered pockets of resistance, the fleets still in disarray. For all their strength, they had underestimated the pull of ideas. The mind core was just one tool, but it was the idea of absolute control that had truly defined their empire. We cannot ignore this. It is no longer just a military conflict, it is an ideological battle. The echelon's vision, their message of freedom, of choice, it's resonating with more than just the oppressed. It's reaching those who've been loyal to us for decades. A voice from the corner of the room interrupted. It was Ilyana, an ambassador from the Zathra. Her voice calm but filled with the weight of years spent on the council. Chancellor, she said, if we continue this path, we risk alienating all those who have come to trust us. The universe does not revolve around just humanity. There are other species, other ways of thinking. Perhaps it is time to rethink our approach, to build something new, a system that doesn't just impose unity, but nurtures it. Orton's gaze fell on Ilyana, and for the first time, he felt the weight of her words sink in. Could humanity truly change its way of thinking? Could they abandon the old, rigid doctrines that had governed their empire for centuries? Could they move from a system built on control to one that fostered cooperation, true cooperation among all species? Before he could respond, General Mira spoke again, her voice filled with a new understanding. It's not just about survival anymore. It's about evolution. If we are to remain in power, it will be through the creation of a truly united galaxy, one that isn't afraid of diversity, one that celebrates it. But this will take time. It's not a switch we can flip. Orton closed his eyes. He had built the human empire on the idea that humanity was meant to lead, that they were the pinnacle of civilization, the architects of the future. But now, those same ideas were being questioned, both from within and without. The virus had shown them that their old methods were vulnerable, that the very systems they relied on were fragile. He turned to the holographic display once more. We have the power to create something new, a galaxy where humanity leads not through force, but through cooperation. But for that to happen, we must change. We must allow change. The proposal. The debate lasted for hours. The room was filled with uncertainty, but also with a quiet sense of hope. It became clear to everyone present that humanity had two choices before it: continue down the path of totalitarian control and risk losing everything, or embrace a future that was messy, uncertain, but ultimately more harmonious. Orton, once the symbol of human strength and authority, looked around the room at his fellow council members. He knew the time had come to make a choice that would define not just the future of humanity, but the future of the entire galaxy. The echelon has shown us that we cannot remain stagnant, Orton said finally, his voice filled with resolve. We will begin negotiations. A new council will be established, one that represents all species, not just humanity. A council where decisions are made not by one species, but by many. We will move toward a galaxy not of subjugation, but of cooperation. The room was silent for a moment, and then the others nodded in agreement. This was a monumental shift, one that would challenge everything they had ever known. It would not be easy, and it would require more than just a new political system. It would require a shift in thinking, a paradigm shift on a galactic scale. But humanity, for the first time, was ready to take that step. The Echelon's response. As the High Council began to move forward with their proposal, the Echelon watched from the shadows, its leaders assessing the unexpected turn of events. Vthak, once a general, now a leader of the resistance, stood with his fellow Echelon commanders. They had not anticipated humanity's leaders to concede so easily, but there was something in the humans' response that resonated with them. We have forced their hand, Vthak said quietly, but we must be careful. This new council, this new system, it may be their attempt to placate us, to pacify the galaxy into submission. We cannot trust them completely. Vera, the former Xyrix diplomat, nodded. We need to stay vigilant. This new council may be humanity's way of holding on to power, not giving it up. But at least for now, we have a seat at the table, and for the first time, our voices may actually be heard. The Echelon had won an important victory, but the battle for the galaxy was far from over. They had forced humanity to question its own ideals, to face the truth about its imperial past. But the true test was yet to come. Could humanity, the empire that had conquered the stars, truly embrace diversity and cooperation without losing itself in the process? A new era. As the days turned into weeks, the galaxy began to shift. Representatives from all corners of the known universe gathered for the first time at the new Galactic Assembly, a council where decisions would be made not by one species, but by all. Humanity, for all its flaws, had taken the first step toward true unity, not as masters, but as equals. The transition was slow, but the changes were undeniable. The once rigid and militaristic human empire began to loosen its grip, allowing for greater autonomy among its subjects. The old barriers between species began to break down, as ideas and cultures from all over the galaxy began to mix, merge, and evolve into something new. Vthak, now a representative at the new assembly, stood among the other delegates. He looked around the room, at the representatives from species who had once been his enemies, and saw something he had not expected: hope, not just hope for the future, but the realization that the galaxy, in its diversity, was stronger than any single empire could ever be. The galaxy was changing, and as humanity stepped into this new era, they too would have to evolve, not just as conquerors, but as citizens of a vastly greater universe. The next chapter was unfolding, and it would not be written by the power of one species, but by the cooperation of many.